Welcome back, ladies and gents, to another episode of the Supercoach Tragics podcast. I'm your host, Dan. And tonight we have, as usual, Glenn and also a special guest with us, Jay, mate, from Supercoach Playbook. So, welcome aboard, mate. Glad to have you on board.
Phil, thank you very much. Thank you very much for having us.
Anytime, mate. For those that are living under a rock, tell us a bit about what your background is and where, and you work with the Playbook a fair bit there.
Yeah, just all started from this year, just putting things out on Twitter, looking at the numbers for break evens and projected price changes for the weeks ahead. So for all of us that are too eager to try and make some trades rather than waiting for Monday, just gives everyone a bit of a leg up. And Timmy actually reached out to us to write some articles for Playbook. So I've been pumping out 1 to 2 articles a week for them since about round 10 or so.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, feel free to give yourself a little plug here, mate. Get your Twitter handle out. I just had a quick browse then and saw there's some pretty good stats up there. Shout out your Twitter handle so we get some more followers and yeah, get some great stats.
Yeah, no, that's all. Yeah, handles just J85S. Sorry, at J85S, just on Twitter. That's the main one what I use to put out all the information. So give us a follow. I usually try and get all the information out within 10 minutes after the game. Only time I don't is just when life gets in the way, but I'll try and get them up the next morning.
Yeah, it seems to be the way. I think people forget we have jobs and stuff as well, so we try to have families to look after, and we can't always neglect our wives, unfortunately. So my wife probably just heard that, so I should probably shush. Thanks, mate. Great to have you on board. So, also tonight we have Glenn as usual, mate. How was your week, mate?
Yeah, I can't complain. I mean, I went and matched all the boys, as you know, went down Pampers League Club and we had a big match up with all the boys with the hub and the Supercoach experience and Tragics. It was a great night out. Didn't play out for me as well in the football, 1,157. So ranked about 12 or 13K. I'm not a happy camper at the moment. But look, you know, you had your ups and your downs and mine are downs at the moment.
Yeah, well, now you can probably start experimenting, mate. Start and go some crazy pods there, and I know 5-8 roulette didn't work for you last year, but maybe have a crack at this year, mate. Might be something that you can do.
I've got all the players that people are bringing in, which is something, but they just didn't go off for me last week. So I'm in a good position with my side. So we'll see how it plays out. Got 7 seasons left to get from 13K to first. It can happen.
Yeah, surely. Yeah. Cool. And just before we get started, how'd you go, Jay, this week, mate? How are you ranking as well?
Yeah, reckon about 16,000. Could have been up around 10,000, but made a couple of shocking mistakes the last couple of weeks with the 50-50 calls. Scored 12.32 though this week, so pretty happy with that. Hopefully try and get close to that top 10,000 and go from there.
Yeah, and that's a good thought because a lot of people like say top 20,000 and they're like, oh, I'm not going to win it this year, so they give up. I think it's really important to let everyone know this is where you can start practicing and start maybe experimenting and try to have a target, set yourself a goal. So if you're like 19,000, you go, you know what, I'm going to aim for 10,000 and try to better yourself, and then next year you go to crack at getting number one. So it's good not to give up. On a lighter note, so I got a 12.05 last week, pretty just below par for me. But still just in the top 1,000 there with a 950 ranking. So I'm doing all right there. I'm hoping to come back to where I was at the start of the season, around 132nd, but that might be a bit of a challenge. So I'm aiming top 100. That's my goal, and hoping I'm going to get there. But hopefully my few little trades I make this week might actually get me there. So
It's hoping.
yeah. So we'll start as always. We'll start off with Tragic's overall group. So we have the same leader as last week, Lux for Losers, sitting at he got 12.03 last week, and he's coming first. Here come the Bears, had a nice little score to break that little gap down a little bit there. So Glenn from there, he got a 13.19 last week, cracking score and just biting at his ankles. So watch out, Edwin. I think Glenn's coming for you. So awesome. All right, let's get started, guys. Game one, I'll start with you, Glenn. Broncos versus Sydney. I'm not sure about you, mate, but I'm pretty sure this game was going to be a cracker.
Absolutely, mate. Look, I'm really keen to see how this game plays out. As we were talking about earlier, the Roosters normally come home strong. The Broncos, we know, are faded. It could answer some answers around the finals. As for Supercoach, there's a few interesting players in here. So the ones of interest for me are obviously James Tedesco. So there's a few fullbacks of interest, and I actually like James Tedesco. And Joseph Manu, I think they're both holds. I think they're both plays. And if you don't know, I'd be jumping on Teddy. He's one to look at. There's a few fullbacks we'll throw out this week. From the other side, Reece Walsh. I think he's got the ceiling now. People don't think he does. I really love what I'm watching with Reece Walsh. But again, as I said, Broncos fade out, so I'd be a little nervy on Broncos players. And I really love Farnsworth and Stagg if you're looking for a pod.
Mm. Yeah, well, I thought Stagg stepped up a little bit the last few weeks just with his NRL wise. He's actually getting more involved and doing what we know Staggs can do. So if you go on early, might be a sneaky little pod for the run home. Any thoughts there, Jay, on this first game?
Yeah, with Teddy, looking back at previous results, like even when Roosters did played extremely poor, he still averaged over 90. So he's definitely one to look at for the run home. No more buys. Broncos still have a buy to come, so beware, especially for those looking at head-to-head finals. Also, as well, with Stags, like he always does go on these runs, but beware, they do dry up very quick.
Mm-hmm.
So it might just be a short-term play, but just keep an extra trade in mind for when that does happen. The other big one, Joey Manu. I would highly, highly recommend getting Joey Manu, possibly actually in 5'8".
Yeah.
Looking at biggest call there, reason why is actually for the here to the run home of the season, not missing any games, it should actually average score the third most amount of points for any 5'8".
Mm.
Yep.
Well, I was talking to you before the pod started, and that was one of my trades. I noticed that Manu will be playing center for the rest of the season, and I'm a bit nervous about it. So I was looking at actually trading him out while he's peaked. But he also does average quite high towards the end of the season, even playing center. In the past, like last year, for example, he did really well. He took on that roaming position in center and actually went from both sides, and he did benefit quite well to Supercoach points.
Yeah, and also with Roosters really trying to make the 8, they're not going to sit back and just not let a game go. They're going to be trying every single game, and Teddy and Manu are going to be a big part of that.
Yeah. Well, I think that made my mind up then, so that's good. Game two. So, this one, a lot of talking points in this one. The Tigers versus the Rabbitohs. So, Glenn, obviously the big question here is, do we get Latrell in now?
Yeah, well, my plan last week was to get Latrell this week, but I wanted him to play last week so I could get a week to look at him and then jump on this week. I'm actually nervous, mate. I'm actually not going to. I'm going to wait one more week, even though it's against the Tigers. But I haven't completely made my mind up. I have the position of where I can move Ponga up with Walker and bring in Latrell or Teddy to go with Gutherson. Or I can just go Gutherson straight to Latrell. There's a few, as you said. We've got to remember that Souths have a bye coming up. I think it's the round of the finals if you're a head-to-head player, if I remember rightly, and then Parramatta the last round. Is that correct? Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, round 26.
Yeah. So don't overload with it. I already have Cook. I already have. I can't even remember who I've got now. I've got a whole heap of them. I've got Walker. I've got Cook, Kalamatungi, and I've got Munro, who's not named. Is that right? Yeah. I like Kalamatungi. I like Damien Cook. Look, I don't know if I do like Damien Cook, to be honest. I've held Cook and Grant, and I hope that would play out for me while everyone played Russian roulette with the hooker position. But both sides have really dominant halves, which means that they've basically become delivery men to the left and the right, which means that their halves call so much of the ball, we're not seeing them run. However, Tigers do tend to leak in the middle and to right second row, as you know. So I feel like this could be a good game for Cookie. Again, I like Campbell Graham. I think that was a good buy by Jay. And Cody Walker's the one I think that if you want to target someone this week, that's who I'd be going. As for the Tigers, John Bateman, hold. I mean, he's averaging 60, 70s just in base, I wouldn't touch anyone else from that side, and I'm a Tiger supporter.
Yeah, there's a lot of people there that may still have Buller in their team. I know I got a few head-to-heads I'm versing this week that still have Buller in their team. Would you say he's a sell?
Absolutely, mate. And the other one I should have said was Cameron Murray points per dollar. I think if you're looking for a trade down, trade up based on price, he could actually be a good buy as well.
I saw his price and I might licking my lips. That's a good price to get Cam Murray at. But
Absolutely.
yeah.
And he'll
Any
average
thoughts?
60, 65 minutes. Sorry, I'll let Jay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right because they have had a bit of a fade off since the Latrell's been gone. They haven't been winning as many games, and I think they need to start winning games to get that top four spot. And I think you're going to see quite a bit of effort there from the Rabbitohs. I think they're going to be similar to the Roosters, what we said before. I think so. Any other thoughts there, Jay, on this game?
Yeah, I was going to say with Cook, like just how he's been going at the moment, it looks like he's just not running the ball as anywhere near as much as what he has been. So the 70s and 80s he was getting, they've turned into 60s.
Mm-hmm.
So, and with the hooking position, it's Grant then Daylight second, to be honest.
Yeah.
I had Jeremy Marshall King and nuffed him out about round 16. So that allowed me to make a lot better moves for some of the higher scoring players coming through. Just for how much what I'm basing that on, the difference between Cook and Grant from now till the end of the season, Grant's probably going to outscore him by about 100 points from what I'm looking at with the data. The other one that's probably a little bit cheaper than Cook, but doesn't miss a game, is actually Blake Brayley.
Yeah.
So something a bit more of a pod move as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to my pod a bit later that I've got in my team. I've got Cook, but I want to turn him to Grant eventually. I haven't got, I'm not rushing because it's not suffocating at the moment. But I got
Round
I got Nicarima in my team. And he's quietly doing some pretty good stuff there. And this week playing 5'8", we'll get to the game a bit later. I'm pretty excited about that option there. But a lot of people, like you mentioned before, are nothing out their second hooker position. I can see why, just due to the fact that it is Grant and Daylight. However, I'm concerned about nothing positions that only have one backup just because of the way the season's running out. And that's the only reason I've gone against it. So if you do it and you have a spare trade ready to go for that injury, if it happens, then great. Then that's a good move. And you can spend that cash elsewhere. I'm just concerned about not having enough trades. That's my fear.
Yeah, the thing what I thought with hooker as well, like I've always been one to always have a backup in every position.
Yeah.
This year, I've definitely gone against the grain just because all the other positions are scoring so much better than hooker.
Oh yeah.
So even if, even on my team, if Grant goes down, I'll just cop a 0 in hooker, and I'll end up scoring better from AE.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as your team's set up correctly and you haven't got the likes of, say, a Schuster lying around doing crap around, you've got a pretty solid backup. Like if you're getting 50s as an AE, that's fine by me. I reckon that's pretty safe. Awesome.
Sorry.
Yeah, the other thing with Latrell, he hasn't played for quite a while. His break even's still well over 120, even though he can easily do that against the Tigers. Even if he does pull out 150, his price isn't going to change that much.
Yep.
So for me, I would advise waiting a week, just in case he ends up tweaking that soft tissue injury again, and then you're back to square one and wasting 2 trades.
Yeah, that was my fear, especially after last week when he was named, and then they said, "Nah, he's not quite ready at training." That to me had put a bit of fear in me in getting him in this week. So and the reason I've got 7 trades left before I make any trades this week, and I will save them for the head-to-head finals, and that may continue. I think I might stick to not trading and stick to Gutho, and wait 1 week. And Gutho actually does pretty well against Melbourne.
Yeah.
Normally, so I think he steps up against those big tough games.
Yeah, funnily enough, every team's got their bogey team, and Parramatta happens to be Storm's bogey team.
That's right.
And I'll tell you right now, there has been times, as not recently, but I think last year and the year before, where the Tigers were the Rabbitohs bunny team, just quietly. There's been some close games there. Remember that infamous try at the end of the game when Tom Burgess got over the line, and then they thought he dropped the ball, so Brooks picks the ball up and runs 100 meters and scores.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
there's been a couple of close games from Tigers and Rabbitohs, so that could be another thing to think about as well. And they're
Yeah.
playing at Scully Park. Where the hell is that?
Tamworth.
There we go.
Yeah, with the Women's World Cup, Rabbitohs and Tigers, some of the Sydney teams are just playing everywhere, all over the place.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. It's good for the local communities. They get to watch some footy, which is great. So, all right, next game, second game Friday night. We've got Melbourne Storm versus Parramatta. So, nice little segue into that. Glenn, mate, any thoughts here?
Yeah, well, so I mean, both these sides need to aim up, don't they? I mean, this should be another game that could answer some questions about who makes top 8, top 4 kind of thing. You know, there's even a chance that either one could slip out. The Storm aren't the same side they were, and the Eels, I don't know. Let's see. I mean, Dylan Brown's back next week, and I think that will tighten up the Eels' side a little bit, you know. But they've just lost Lane as well, which brings Davey in. But look, Gufferson's the big talking point from Eels, right? I've had a lot of people messaging me, do I sell him? What do you think about Gufferson to Latrell? I don't like it. I actually think that Gufferson will score pretty well versus Storm. But it was one of the options that I did consider. I actually am considering Gutherson is an effort player, and I do believe that they have the ceiling in him with that spine. And they keep leaking on the edges where Gutherson likes to put the ball. You know, Gutherson moves to the edge and then he passes out to that edges, and that's where they're leaking. So he's the one. Moses, though, is another question. I would be looking to sell Moses. You know, I think Sean Johnson has a really good draw, Cleary or Hines. And I've got Cleary and Hines, and I'm sticking with that, but I don't think I like Moses. So they're the two of interest there. Cartwright's another one. I think you would be a sell now. You know, for those that got him through the buy round, you could probably move him on. From the Storm, Harry Grant, I own. I don't know if I would rush to buy him, man. Like, I do agree with you that he's the number one, but do you waste a trade if you've got a Cook or a JMK? I'm not so sure. Blake Brayley, you know. The Storm, they do have no buys, if I'm remembering right. Is that right? They don't have any buys up until the weekend. So there's a plus there for any Storm players. The only other player that's of interest to me there, obviously, is Nick Meaney. With the fullbacks that are in line at the moment, you know, at least you can play him at centre wing. So move him to centre wing and you can sell someone else. So they're the only ones of interest to me. Oh, I'm sorry. And, of course, Cameron Munster. I've got Walker and Ponga if I move Ponga up. So I don't have room for Munster, but I'm a little bit annoyed that I don't. And based on the draw and the fact that they don't have a buy, he could be a good play for someone just doesn't have many trades left.
Yeah, definitely. Any other thoughts there, Jay?
Yeah, Munster definitely. Just he's actually going to looks like he'll be the second highest behind Ponga for 5'8". So if you're running a combination of Ponga and Munster, yeah, absolutely cheering at the moment.
Yeah.
The other one with just briefly mentioned JMK. The other reason why I got rid of him just being injured and only playing shortened minutes. Definitely not a buy.
Yeah,
try and ride it out. Hope for the best.
Yeah.
But definitely Melbourne haven't been the same team they always were. But from a Supercoach point of view, they've only ever had maybe about 3 Supercoach relevant players every year.
Yeah.
All the rest, they just get in, do their job, go well in actual rugby league, but Supercoach wise, they just don't score well.
Yeah.
So unless you're looking at one of the big 3, Munster, Grant, and Meaney, just give a pass.
Agreed. Yep.
Yeah, 100%. Especially with Meaney being available in centre wing. I think I've got him there and he's had him for ages. So,
what are your thoughts, Jay, on selling Moses? Do you think people should be doing that now?
I'd probably be holding Moses.
Okay.
Actually, holding Moses, probably get rid of him in round 27 when he does have the bye.
Yep.
Purely because like anything that Parramatta does, it's going through Moses. Yep. Same with Gutho. Gutho to Latrell doesn't make any sense to me at all. It's too sideways. Latrell's an impact player, whereas Gutho just gets in, does the hard work, and anytime there's an attacking opportunity, it's coming off the back of Moses and Gutho.
Yeah. Dylan Brown next round, back next week. It could be interesting. I think that it makes them an even more potent side. I really like Dylan Brown, Moses, and Gutherson combo. And Moses is taking the line on a lot more this year, which is, he's really attacking a lot. He's really taking the ball up and running a lot more.
Yeah, you can see that definitely in his scores rather than just getting the ball and passing it out the back.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was almost depressing. I'm a Panthers fan, so I have I guess an obligation to hate Parramatta. But I almost felt depressed watching them. I felt sorry for them last week. They were like, you could see it, they were brokenhearted when they were playing. Normally when they get that run and they start battling teams, like when they're against Penrith, they are proud. They just celebrate, they go hard. And they were broken people last week in that game, and it was like real hard to watch. So but in saying that, I'm a Panthers fan, so screw them. All right, anything else in those games before we move on to the Saturday games?
No, that was yeah, that was about it. There's not really much else really from those two from the numbers point of view.
Just remembering that Eels have the bye on the last round, and Storm don't have a bye all the way through. So for those, the head-to-head or overalls, just if you want to keep that in mind.
Yeah, if you're a head-to-head player, I think having those para players in your team, you're not worried too much about that round 27. So, as we know, grand final, if a head-to-head is round 26.
Yeah.
All right, Saturday game, Glenn Raiders versus the Knights. I can see this being a pretty high-scoring game for Supercoach. Your thoughts here?
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think that the Raiders just seem to be sticking in, don't they? But they, so they're interesting, and the Knights have a really interesting draw, and they have a few players that are Supercoach relevant. So obviously, Kalen Ponga, who's just scored. I mean, look what he done at the Storm last week. That was incredible what he done. Yeah. Greg Marzu, he's the beneficiary of Ponga's great step, not to mention his incredibly great base. I actually like Best, and for a pod, I don't hate Dominic Young. I know he doesn't rely on the base as good as the other two. I mean, I'd rather get Best or Marzu, more likely Marzu. I think they're the only ones of interest for me. On the other side, I mean, I'd be holding Tarpany and Horse personally. I mean, they weren't as pretty last week, but I'll be interested to hear what Jay has to say. But they're the only ones of interest. I think if you're playing draft, I don't hate Rapana or Tomoko for draft players.
Yeah, I think I have Rapana and even Hopewadi in one of my drafts, and I just play him on their matchups because they have that pretty decent try scoring ability. Luckily, I've got some solid base players like I got Herbie Farnworth and Campbell Graham as my main centre wing, so it's always good.
I got Carrez and Avarillo, and they've been absolutely blitzing it for me in the draft. Like seriously, I mean, keep an eye on those two, mate. They especially Avarillo. He's been consistently scoring really well.
Yeah. Any other thoughts there, Jay?
Yeah. Well, with Raiders, like they've just been the fade out team all season. Like every time they've had a lead, it ends up being come down the last 2 minutes every single game. However, same as last year, the Raiders are leaving their run really late, ramping up into finals. Looking at their 3 round averages compared to what they've been averaging for the season, they're 10, 15 points up on their 3 round average.
Yeah.
For Tapani, Horsburgh, Tomoko. They're just really peaking at the right time. So if you don't have them, I'd consider it. But if you've got them, there's definitely no need to sell at all. With the Knights, Ponga's definitely the biggest star there by a country mile, and 3 round average of 138. You can't really say no to that.
Oh yeah.
But in that though, it's coming off the back of Best and Margie, both of them averaging in the 90s, 3 round average in the 90s at the moment. The other one that's a little bit more of a pod for second row is Fitzgibbon. Every year he seems to go on to get a lot of attacking stats. If you can get him at the right time, he can definitely do some damage.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I think we've mentioned Fitzgibbon a few times in the last few weeks. I think we really like especially when Ponga plays in that fullback position, he tends to sweep around and they either passes it to him or he has a face ball across to the centre. And often they'll hit Fitzgibbon and he goes through that line quite well. So
I was a big advocate for Fitzgibbon when he was playing 5'8" because he was outside him, but he manages to do the same thing as you just said from the fullback position. I do. I think he's a very interesting pod, Jay Fitzgibbon.
Yeah, and he just gets himself in the right area at the right time, that's all you can ask for.
Yeah, good line
Eh,
runner too.
He's been around the Newcastle system for so long, and this is going to be his last season for the Newcastle Knights. So he might want to go with a bang. You might see a nice little juicy run home just out of pride, really, as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like season average is 61, but at the moment, in that little bit of a spurt, is 3 round average of 90,
Yeah, nice.
and
Mm.
still only priced at just a tick over 600K.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, like that a lot.
nice.
All right. Next game. So game 2 Saturday, we've got Dragons up against the Manly Sea Eagles at Wynn Stadium. So the Dragons tend to play a little bit better at Wynn Stadium, but I'm not sure if they can do it against Manly. Thoughts there, Glenn?
Yeah, well, I honestly don't like anyone other than Zach Lomax if you're looking for a pod. But I personally won't be touching anything from the Dragons. I like my backs coming from ceiling clubs. I think Ruben Garrick's a hold. Schuster's a sell. I think Cherry Evans, DCE, I think he's an interesting, as you know, at the back end of seasons, DCE tends to come home strong. Supercoach years, he's always done that. If you're looking for a pod, you need someone a little interesting, DCE could be your man. And Olakau'atu too. I don't hate Olakau'atu. I just think there's better. But I don't mind him outside DCE. So they're the ones that I'm looking at.
Anything else, Joe?
Yeah, with Olakau'atu, for me, he just hasn't been the same this year. Um, he's he's just too very up and down. Like he's just not hitting the ceiling as what he was last year.
Mm.
Like only got only a maximum score of 81 for the season. Like that's not the ceiling we're looking for this year.
And I'm pretty sure that week he scored 2 tries.
Yeah,
Yeah, you got there was no line breaks involved, but there was 2 tries in that game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. To rely on get 2 tries and score that, no, thank you.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, Garrick definitely a hole for the run home, especially with the goal kicking. DCE, he'll always put in effort in every single week. And then as far as Dragons go, yeah, there's not a lot there at all. Lomax, great pod, especially for anyone that picked him up a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
3 round average of 98.
Yeah.
That's absolutely massive. The other one that's a little bit of a different pod, though, is Ravalawa. So yeah, he's always anytime they've got a bit of space out wide, big body, he'll crash over every time.
Yeah, I'm looking at the draw though for Dragons, and it's not looking too pretty either. So with the outside back pods, be a bit nervous owning them. There's the reason why they're pods, obviously. But they got to play against the Storm. They got Parramatta, and it's a bit shaky there. So
If you're a draft player too, like one of the things I do as a draft player is I like buying every round for matchups. And like certain rounds, like bringing in players like Lomax, Ravalawa, these Fitzgibbon, some of those players could be available in your So some of these names, listen to them because if you're not going to buy them in Classic, they could actually be very useful to you in draft as well.
yeah, sneaky pick for draft actually, who I've seen in a couple of my drafts free agent lists is actually Sloan.
Okay.
So we know what he can do. We know what he can't do very well. But here's an option there. You can pick up matchups too.
No, I would have been the draft winner. What do you call it? The one that's the highest points at the end.
Minor Premier.
Premier, had I not lost to you last week. Just want you to know that. So now I've got to play off against Kando for the minor premiership and Tyrone. All three of us on the same score.
Yeah, I had Kando cheering me on, mate. He was cheering me on during the week, telling me that make
Hey,
sure I win so I can take the minor premiership away from you.
you had Croker. I couldn't believe it, man. Croker's like he just scored. He got a try assist, line break assist. He got a line break. He just kept He got a forced dropout. He got everything.
That's the best thing about draft, mate. You get these players that just you'd never ever own, and then all of a sudden they just go on a run. Yeah.
Actually, the one thing I did have a quick flick at, have a look at the Dragons run. To be honest, I just put a line straight through any Dragons players.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Manly.
Manly at home, Parramatta at Combank. That's horrible. And then Rabbitohs with the Rabbitohs home game in Cairns. Then they host the Storm. Then they've got Warriors in New Zealand, and then finish with the Knights. Like that is horrible.
It's a scary one, isn't it?
Did you see the mistake I made in my draft side, by the way, Dan? Did you see I'd made a mistake?
Oh, mate, I wasn't paying too much
On
attention to
the
that
bench,
draft.
I had Luai and Apai. I had Buller at fullback. I needed to move Ponga down to fullback and bring Luai into 5'8", and I just totally forgot because I had the weekend. Well, that's the excuse I'm coming up with.
Yeah, that's it, mate. Yeah, the old busy weekend. All
Yeah.
right, guys. The final game on Saturday, we've got Panthers versus the Sharks. I can see this being like Panthers versus the Dragons, frankly, the way the Sharks have been playing lately, Glenn.
Yeah, I'll tell you the player that really sticks out to me this week is Brian Toho. Against that edge, against the Sharks, I think Toho and even Critter could have a day out. I'm a player that likes ceiling clubs, and Panthers are a ceiling club. To be fair, Sharks are for Supercoach can be a ceiling club. I sold Mulatala last week to Cleary, and I said in the chat he will score. It was inevitable when I sell, and he did. 12-9-60. But look, I think Dylan Edwards is a sell. I think Taruva's a play on matchup. I think Peachy, if you own him, is a sneaky little pod. I really like Peachy, especially in draft. You could bring him at second row as well. But Toho and Cleary are the two that I'd be looking at from the Panthers side. From the Sharks, I really cannot stand Mulatalo. I reckon he's a sell, but people, it's up to you. I think Kennedy's a sell. Hines is a hold. If you own, he's still the highest scoring player in Supercoach, yet people are selling him like it's nuts. People are selling him all over the shop.
I'm all for it, mate. I'm all. I know. I'm only all for it because there's, like we mentioned before, in the hooker position, there's bugger all to pick from that are actually doing well. In the halves, we have a smorgasbord of awesome halfbacks we can put in there. So Hines has a horrible run.
Yeah,
They got Panthers this week. They got to versus the Storm. They got a rough run, and we all know what the Sharks are like against top 8 teams. So, looking at his previous scores, his highest score against the top 8 team, I think, was like a 90, which is,
yeah,
don't get me wrong, is great.
yeah,
But if you look at other teams out there, like I'm thinking about going Hines to Cleary, not this week, but probably soon, and then having SJ as my backup because the New Zealand draw is really, really good. They've got a few home games as well. But you can't have all three. I think SJ will be almost a pod for head-to-head finals.
yeah. I don't hate it. Look, Cleary, I think, is a definite own or buy or keep, but I don't disagree with you totally. And especially versus the Panthers specifically, they do tend to contain backs and halves. So it could be an interesting question on sit start for Hines this week, although I'll be playing him. But Hines to Sean Johnson, I don't hate it.
Oh, I'm not going Hines to Sean Johnson. No way. I'll be going Hines to Cleary, mate. That's what I'll be doing.
Don't you have Sean Johnson? You have Sean Johnson already, don't you?
Yeah, so I'm forced to play Hines this week, and that's what's making me think about it.
Yeah,
so
right.
if I can go Hines to Cleary, and then I can feel safer with Cleary's score, and for the run home in a ceiling club with a easier draw than what the Sharks have got. So hopefully, maybe Jay can shed some more light on this stupidity from me.
Yeah. Pretty much looking at the run from here on out, Hines, if Hines can emulate what he's been doing, he'll be the highest scoring Supercoach player. However, with that draw and how Cronulla have been playing, I'm highly doubting that. Cleary since he's been back, last week with his first game, he was solid without being great. He's just going to warm up and get into finals.
Yeah.
So he's really going to ramp up and start putting some teams to the sword, which could start this week against a really poor Sharks outfit at the moment.
Especially the left edge, which is the side that Cleary will be attacking with Brian Toho and Critter, and even who's Martin, isn't it?
It'll be Martin on that side, and potentially Garner if they put him on that. Okay, just quietly, how
I saw
that pass to Garner.
Yeah, it was nice.
That did not get the credit that it deserved. That pass was so good. I don't know how it missed the bloody opposition player. It was that good. So,
Jay, you're a stats man. What tackles did Cleary make last week? He usually is a good front-on defender, and I didn't see him making a lot of tackles last week.
Oh, I do not have that one in front of me, actually.
Yeah, that's what I was curious because I mean that's one of the things that I like about Cleary is he has a bit of base around defence. And I didn't notice him making a lot of tackles last week, and I wondered if there was something.
Yeah, I can tell you right now how many tackles he made, mate. 5.
Yeah, well, there you go.
That's not Supercoach stats. That's actually from the League Live app. But
Yeah,
I normally with Supercoach they'll pay less tackles.
that's right. Absolutely.
So, mm. All right, cool. I'm feeling good then. That was one of my other risky trades that I was thinking about making this week.
One more I wanted to throw up for draft players was Robert Luai. I that the Panthers play left a lot, and Cleary goes to Luai a lot, and he even comes over onto the left hand side and loads Luai up and makes Luai that one that does that short kick or the short pass. You know, they're playing that way quite a bit. So it's annoying if you own Taruva because Peachy doesn't pass the ball, and it's kind of annoying if you don't own Toho because Critter doesn't pass the ball. But the good thing about Toho is he's got the base. And I think Toho could have a day out this week, and I actually think Luai could as well.
Yeah, Toho being the winger as well, he gets all the carries back from the kicks and everything. So he gets in and gets the hard work done.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Did you guys notice the little game plan shift there last week where there was actually less runs from the back against the Bulldogs? That was actually a very, very smart strategic plan from Cleary as the coach because he's playing against the guy that coached their team for that same strategy. So that's why you see Fisher Harris and Leota and all the front rowers taking more hit ups. I thought that was so smart. That was a good move.
Yeah, they played very direct with the Bulldogs, and to be fair, that's how you do play the Bulldogs. They tend to leak up the middle, as Jay will probably say. You know that's a good way to play the Dogs is straight up the middle.
Yeah, definitely. Like reason why the Bulldogs are just so like unfortunately to say it, but a bit poor in the middle of they just are missing a lot of the experience and missing some of the bigger players. So you just can't have the younger guys there week in, week out. They'll do a job for a couple of weeks, but they just can't do it for a full season.
Yeah. And they get a bit tired as well. Often you'll see the Bulldogs start off real strong, very aggressive in defense. And then they're going too hard too early. And then about 20 minutes in, that's when you see the forwards start going through it. And they a lot of holes open up, a lot of missed tackles through the middle. So
and they
that's
lost
been
one
a
of
common
the defenders last week as well, in Preston.
Yeah. He's been pretty much one of the stable players for the whole year. He's been doing really well defensively as well. So all right, guys. Game 1 on Sunday. We're looking at the Canterbury Bulldogs versus the Dolphins. I'm liking the Dolphins here for a few Supercoach points.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd be buying any of them. I had Cody Nikorima, as you know, and I sold him to Grant. And if I had kept Cody Nicker, I'd be points better off. But for the long term, I don't hate it. I'm going to say it. There's a couple of pods in the Bulldogs side that I actually really like. That's Jake Averillo. And Jay will probably give us some numbers around his averages in a second. And Jacob Carraz. I don't hate either of them. And Billy Army Kickow is back. You know, if you're looking for a pod, I mean, I'd wait and see. But I think Preston's a hold. A lot of people are jumping off Preston. I don't know if he's a sell. But I actually don't like anything at all, like literally anything other than Nikorima. Of course, Ozako. My apologies. Ozako. I mean, I've got Ozako, hold Ozako, you know, and as you said earlier, they've got quite a nice run. So Ozako and even Habo Fido could be a
Hammer, yeah.
Yeah, the hammer.
Yeah, that was one of my trades I was literally contemplating was going Joey Manu to Osako. Because if you look at Osako's price now, he's the number 1 center wing this year. He's number 3 ranked fullback, and he's priced under 600K.
Yeah.
And with that run home, he's owned by 35%. It's not really potty, but he's also when you look at head to heads, you also want to make sure that you don't not have a guy that they're going to have. I think so. You're going to lead points. So, any thoughts there, Jay?
Yeah, with the Sacco, like it started off the season like a house on fire, and that's where he scored so many points. The last few weeks, though, I don't know with the involvement or what, but he's just kind of fallen off a cliff. Like his season average still 74, but 3-round average only of 47.
Yeah.
So that's not the greatest, unfortunately, with the Sacco. However, Nikorima, since he's made that move and been the focal point in their attack, he's been absolutely amazing for them, jumping up from 56 average for the season, 3-round average of 77, which that's very significant. Either one of them, there's not really it's hard to buy them this week when you look at the break evens. Osako's over 100. Tabarofado is about 90. Nicarima, 68.
Mm.
So it's not as though they're unachievable, but especially against the Bulldogs, but they're just a little bit tricky. With the Bulldogs, however, yeah, they've got some really interesting like pods with Carraz. Looks like he's finally come back to form
Yeah.
from what we saw at the start of the season. So yeah, last three scores pretty much 70 in the last three games, which has been absolutely fantastic. Even with not as much opportunity as what he would get if he was at, say, the Panthers or Souths or something. And then you've got Avarillo as well. He's playing out of his skin the last few weeks as well. 3 on average of 78.
Yeah.
Compared to only 48 for the season.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I found that Avarillo, he's that guy that in NRL wise, he's that guy that will just be there as a support player. So if someone makes a line break, he's there to actually make that to be the receiver of that line break. And he just seems to be there every time there's anything going on. And he scored quite a few tries this year. I think he got a hat trick a couple of weeks back, I'm pretty sure as well.
Coincide with that 78 average is the fact that he's moved position too. So he's gone from
Mm.
centre to fullback, and I mean that allows him to come, as you say, on the left and the right. And he reminds me of Terry Lamb, where he's always on the ball. He follows the ball around, and he creates them opportunities. And I picked him up when he moved to fullback straight away in the draft, and I thought there's a little potty, and it's played out really nicely for me.
Yeah, exactly. With that moving around, if he's fixed in centre or wing, like you can see him getting a little bit lost. Whereas at fullback, when he's got free reign, like he really can just make the most of it.
Yeah.
And I think Avarillo he's a half normally, isn't he? He's a natural half. That's probably why he's actually there. He'll get quite a few tries. He's there to always back up his current halves, and he has decent ball playing skills, so he can actually set up a few tries, which is great.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And they do have a bye next week, but then their run home isn't looking too bad, I guess. They've got the Knights in round 24, and then Raiders at home, which you never know which Raiders you're going to get, and then they got Manly, and that's round 26, so not the worst run home. And then in round 27, they've got Gold Coast Titans, so decent little run there for them.
Yeah, and Titans can be anything any week.
Oh yeah, it's they can start off and they'll score 30 points in the first half and then lose still. So,
Yep, it's been very frustrating.
yeah, that's it.
And with Bulldogs playing Raiders in Canberra, I actually I'd actually prefer teams playing Canberra in Canberra. Canberra is so much better away from home than what they are at Canberra. They do. So and they've been like that for a few years now, actually, as well. Just for whatever reason, they're just better on the road.
Yeah, I noticed, was it a couple of years back there, we all used to love Ponga as a player who averaged quite well. But back when Ponga was good, but he'd always struggle to get that big ceiling score. And then he broke that curse with 188 points in Canberra against Canberra. And that game was the week that I think we all had him. I think everyone was very popular, scoring 90s every week. And then he just busts out that score. And I was like, oh, how good was that? And that was embarrassing Canberra in front of their own crowd, which I love because I live in Canberra and I'm not a big fan of the Raiders. So I love seeing that happen.
Yeah, no, sorry, Timmy, I know you'll be watching this at some time.
Oh, Timmy's been a Raiders fan quite a long time, so I think he understands. There's a history with Panthers and the Raiders as well. Panthers have a history with every team, I think. It's a lot of aggression there, I think. So,
Yeah.
All right. Final game of the week: Gold Coast Titans versus the Cowboys. Glenn, mate, what are your thoughts here?
First thing I wanted to say is that I should have said it earlier on is you should be only trading three ways if you're trading now: keepers, pods, nuffs. You don't bring in anything less than that from here on. There's a few in this side that I do like, actually. So obviously drink water, but you'd need a cool meal to do that. So if you own drink water, don't only hold him. He's a very serious captain option for this particular round and matchup. Valentine Holmes. He's the one that I think if you're looking for a centre wing for a keeper for the run home, no buys from memory on the run home.
No, they do have a bias coming up.
Oh, do they? Oh, so it goes Broncos, Cows, if I remember.
Yeah, round 24, there's a bye for the Cowboys.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You're right. Okay, so they do have a bye. My apologies. Geez, how good has Dearden been just on a football
Mhm.
level? I mean, he's such an exciting young prospect in the game. But apart from those two, Drinkwater and Holmes from the Cowboys, I don't really like anything else from a Supercoach perspective that I see as a keeper. And obviously David Fafita from the Titans, who I already own. But I'm seriously considering Holmes myself this round, this
Mhm.
particular week.
Yeah. Anything else there, Joe?
Yeah, definitely. Drinkwater has just been playing absolutely amazing football. Like he's give him a little bit of space, he's just going to go straight around you, put it under the post. And Dearden's been there either supplying or backing up every time as well.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, Valentine Holmes has been on the back of it as well with all the goal kicking. Um, but apart from those ones, there's really not much at the Cowboys. Um, with the Titans, however, Dave Fafita, he's he's just a machine.
Yeah.
Um, someone that big to have that much handling skills is just not right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
um,
I'm loving that. I'm loving that pass he developed this year. It just came out of nowhere. That no look pass to the winger, cutout pass. It's so good to watch.
yeah,
Yeah.
I remember last year actually. There's just a brute force in power. I think it was against the Bulldogs or the Tigers. Just took a quick tap 10 meters out and just ran over three blokes rather than giving it to the half. And just like, no, I'll go this.
It was like a very short little run, but it managed to get like 42 Supercoach points just because of all the tackle busts in that one run. I remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The only other ones I'd say to mention, for anyone who's got Tino and needing to downgrade, maybe have a look at Mo Fodawaker.
Mm.
Okay.
He's going to be playing lot more minutes, and he's been playing very consistently all year. At the moment, 3-run average is 71 as well. So even though he may not get the attacking stats, he just gets the work done.
Mm.
Um, and then out in the wings, you've got Brian Kelly and Philip Sammy. So if you've got a player that's injured or you need to downgrade to make a move somewhere else, either of those ones, great option just to have as like a fifth or sixth center wing. Both are averages about 60, 65. So good one to play because they're not going to miss any more games for the rest of the season either.
Mate, I am live trading right now in my draft Ukatamano to Fodawaker.
Yeah.
I don't even know how I missed that one, Jay.
Mm.
I did, but that's a really good draft pick. And the other ones I was looking at, if you're a draft player, I don't hate JJ Fafita. I just think he's interesting. If you're just looking for, I was going to ask you how much is Fodawaker in Supercoach and what's his break even?
Fodawaker at the moment is 602K, and his break even is only 53.
Oh, nice. Yeah, he could be a good option down.
He's a player that I look at every single year purely because of the work rate. His base alone is so good. He's just never had the minutes. And if you're saying with Tino gone, he gets more minutes. He's definitely become more of a leader in the pack since he first started from the bench doing 20 minutes. And he's one of those rare ones that will get extra minutes, but his PPM stays the same.
Yeah,
So, which I love. Yeah.
yeah, he's just got a huge motor and will just keep on
Hmm.
going.
Yeah. And just on that, Brian Kelly is I've always liked Brian Kelly
Yeah.
for as a winger, as a center wing for base as well. He's normally pretty solid for base. He's looking pretty juicy. I'm looking at the last since round 17, 81, 61, 105, 56, 66. Pretty good scores there from Brian Kelly. And even before that, his lowest score was 46, and then you go 56 and then a 90 again. Like he's got some solid scores there and he's going under the radar quite nicely.
Yeah, exactly. He's another one that just puts himself in the right place at the right time. Just finds space. He's not the biggest guy, but he just gets the job done.
He's not that big, but he's so strong too. He's one of those guys that'll just like throw people off him to score a try as well. He's just
Yeah,
so keen to get that ball down. So like he might not be the big bloke, but he's tough. He can take those heavy runs. He can actually take a few guys like out and score a try.
yeah, definitely. And then also with the Titans as well because they are all the way down in 14th, but they're only really two games off getting in the top eight. So at the moment, Eels are 8th on 24 points, and Titans are 14th, but they're only on 20.
Okay.
Yeah.
So leaving a run late, but there is a chance.
And out of the next 5 games, they got 3 of them at home as well. They got what? So they got Warriors in Gold Coast. They got the Cowboys this week, and they got the
That's a Warriors
Sharks.
home game though.
No. It's actually Gold Coast in Gold Coast.
Oh, the amount of what? The amount of the amount of Cowboys, and I'm sorry, the amount of
They're
New
there.
Zealand, the Gold Coast.
Yeah, the Queenslanders. You go to Brisbane or the Gold Coast, mate. Their New Zealander supporters will be there. They love it.
Yeah. Well, I live right in between Gold Coast and Brisbane,
Mm,
and each time you go to a home game for either team, it's a home game for the Warriors.
mm.
And we've even got a suburb up here that's actually we just nicknamed New Zealand.
We got one of
Love
them called Bondi.
it. Love it. Anything else before we go on to our trade talks, guys?
No, nothing for me.
All right, let's talk trades. We'll start with you, Glenn, mate. What trades are we looking at this week?
I'm not trading at this point, but I am considering possibly getting Valentine Holmes. But to do that, I would have to put him at fullback and move Ponga up to 5'8". The other option I'm looking at, so I'm quite cashed up. I've got 466k in the bank, which is enough for me to turn Katoa. That I've got Hines, Cleary, Walker, Katoa. I just have not been able to get rid of him, and I can get him to Tedesco or Holmes and move Ponga up to 5'8". So that's one option I'm looking at. Or the other option is going to Munster, but to do that, I'd have to nuff. But yeah, that's that. At this point, I don't know if I'm going to. I think I just might hold my trades. I've got a pretty good. I've got 19. I've got to sit 2 out as it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm in the similar boat. But was it go to you, Jay? Any trades this week, mate?
The only one I'm tossing up is actually just kind of rectifying what I did last week and just getting in Teddy. The one I was actually need to get rid of though to get him in, just because he's on the buy this week is Nickel Clockstad. I know he's on a run, but he's priced at his maximum.
Yeah.
If there's a time to cash someone in, is when they're at their maximum.
Mm.
The only other one, that came across my mind was it going Jackson Ford to Cam Murray.
Yeah.
Only thing that scared me off though is with Murray having the buy, so they're not really gaining anything. It's going to be very sideways.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been thinking about 3 different trades to make. Obviously, I've only got the 2 I can use, but I'm actually looking like I'm only going to make the 1, and that might not even happen either. I might just stick with Hines, but I'm thinking about going Hines to Cleary as I just think this week the points just to make my head-to-head finals. I mean, I'm in head-to-head finals and all my head-to-heads, but want to get that top 4. So give myself another chance. The other trade I was thinking, because that frees up a little bit of cash, and that means I can go Jackson Ford, and I'm one of the stupid ones that still has Schuster. I could move Schuster to the second row, and then bring in Munster. So I could get Cleary and Munster in 2 trades. So that one there would set me up for the run home.
One of the little stats that might actually help make your mind up a little bit, looking at the past stats, Hines versus the Panthers, he's got an average of 48.
Yeah.
In the 3 games he's played, and a maximum score only of 53.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, and they're playing at home as well, Blue Bet. So to me, that's just going to be a cauldron there for the Sharks. I think it's going to be a thrashing. So
yeah, back in halves versus the Panthers tend to struggle.
Yeah. Well, that's me. What are our thoughts on vice captain? We'll start with you, Glenn.
Yeah, so I'm going vice captain Cody Walker. I'm hoping that he finally does something. With Latrell Mitchell in the side, I think that they're a much better side with Latrell in. I would prefer Totola was there as well. I still don't think they got the punch up the middle that I'd like to see, but I'm going to do that anyway. But I think if you own Tedesco, he'd be a good option, and even Walsh. And as for my captain, it's going to be Captain Cleary versus the Sharks. I think he's going to kill that edge. That left edge is going to have him coming at him all game. I think Cleary's smart enough to see what's happened in the last 3 weeks on that edge. And whether, I just think that they're just struggling in that area.
Yeah, like it. Jay, your captain, vice captain.
Yeah, keeping it simple. VC on Ponga, captain on Cleary.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I'm going to go a little bit different on my vice captain. I've got Koala Matangi. I'm liking him against the Tigers there, the edge. So I'm gonna go VC on Kwame, and then put the C on Cleary. And that's that trade. That's trade's kind of my mind's made up now after those stats. So I'll be getting Cleary in for sure. So yeah, I had the option there. I like having that because I got other options there. There's another player that I really like who in my head to head if I need to make adjustments and I'm losing and he's captain Cleary as well. I actually like Cody Nikorima as a captain option this week as well. Bit different. I know it's a bit sideways, but I love to have a little pod option in my head, just in my arsenal, ready to go. So
Yep. No, it is always good to have that. Or the VC, especially this time of the year, with everyone having their teams kind of stacked, and an AE is not really going to hurt you, so you really can go very left field with your
yeah.
vice captain.
Mm. And one thing I will say is currently in my team I've got Mulatalo and Taruba still in my team. I'm not playing them both this week, and instead I'm actually going to play Schuster in my 17 this week. Unusual one, but I think against the Dragons, I reckon Schuster can actually outscore Ronaldo and Taruba.
I don't hate
So,
it.
mm.
I like
but
it.
but in saying that, if I was to do the forward to Munster trade, then I wouldn't need to worry about that at all. And I could play Munster as my last reserve, so that would
Yeah.
help a lot more. So that might make my mind up then as well. Awesome. All right. Do we have some questions, Glenn? Few
Do,
questions.
mate. We've got 2 questions in. I haven't checked to see if there's any more, so hopefully I haven't missed anyone. But Bradley Baxter asks, as a head-to-head player, looking at Teddy and CNK or CNK and Fanua Blake in the next 2 weeks, if I go with Teddy and CNK, I'm running Tahu and Tarpany in the front row. So he's looking at buying Tedesco. Is a player looking at Teddy and CNK or CNK and Fanua Blake in the next 2 weeks? Well, I'd prefer
I
Teddy.
get the next 2 weeks because there's the Warriors have a bye this week, so something to look at.
I like the
Um,
Teddy trade. I don't know if I like Tahu as your second front rower, but I wouldn't be spending money in front row. I
mm.
personally think that the ceiling on the way home is in your backs and your halves and your fullbacks.
Jay?
Yeah, yeah, I wouldn't be spending any money at the front row at all. I'm actually running still Udikamanu as my third front row.
Yeah,
So he's been really good as a third option.
yeah,
But definitely, well, same with myself. I'm getting in Teddy for C and K this week, so
yeah.
I like that one.
Yeah, that's why I thought you might be good to answer that one because he's looking at bringing in Teddy and CNK. So, and I think you made comments before about that CNK is probably more at his peak. Probably would rather sell than buy him this week.
Yeah, yeah. Like you're not going to. Well, you're definitely going to get C and K cheaper coming up. His
Mm.
break. Just have a quick look at uh his break even is only 67 at the moment, so it's not completely sky high. But again, he just doesn't. He hasn't consistently had the ceiling as what Teddy has had.
Mm.
So in the last few weeks, he has played well, but he's only got 60, 61, 92, and 69. Whereas Teddy, on the other hand, has just showed everyone what he can do when he gets a bit of ball and really gets the running behind himself. Get with that 134 last week.
Mhm. Like it. Next question, Glenn.
Yeah, the next question's from Corey Athenate. I'm down to my last trade. Ouch. And I have 174K in the bank. I'm thinking of Ozako to Teddy. Or I could go Garrick to Latrell. Or I could go Val to Drinkwater. I don't like any of them, bro. Thoughts, or would you go the last trade for an emergency? I do have good depth to cover for injury. So he's thinking of selling Ozako to Teddy. I wouldn't be doing that personally. Garrick to Latrell, I wouldn't be doing. Or Val to Drinkwater. I mean,
All,
Val's a hold, Ozako's a hold, and Latrell's a hold.
yeah, all three of those players he's mentioned to trade out, they're luxury trade outs.
Yeah,
And if you've only got the one trade left, mate, hold that trade and treat it like gold until you need an injury replacement.
Yeah,
yeah,
unless you've got a squad of about 21 players, 21, 22 players, yeah, hold.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But like obviously those trades he was making would have been upgrades, I guess, but you'd still yeah, it's too late in the game to be doing those kind of slightly sideways trades, I reckon.
Look, let's take this down a bit. So Ozako to Teddy, right? I really think that's sideways. I really do,
Mm.
based on the fact that one's goal kicking. Garrick to Latrell, another one goal kicking to a goal kicker. I really am nervous on Latrell. I'd wait and watch. And Val to Drinkwater, another goal kicker. He wants to get through these goal kickers in a possibly sealing game where I think Val could equally score Drinkwater. I really don't like any of them trades.
And I feel like with Val to Drinkwater, at least you're getting a piece of Drinkwater. With Val, getting some of that kind of attacking stats because of Drinkwater, so you're getting a piece of that still. You might not be getting the whole lot, but you've got the security of the Cowboys are on a run. They've turned out that they've after that massive flogging against the Tigers, they've kind of turned around a little bit and they actually seem to be back to last year's form. And in that, you've got Holmes who can kick goals for them. I think that's I'd be people are bringing in Holmes. So
yeah, and Holmes, remember a few years ago before he went over to the States, like he does have that ceiling.
Yeah, absolutely. And just on that, the three players that you're talking about buying are all good buys. I just don't like the people you're selling for them. So if there's another way you can get to them, sure. But if one trade left, mate, and 7 rounds to go, whatever it is to go, I'd be very nervous. I'd probably hold that trade, mate, because you could lose anyone, anywhere, and then you will be in all sorts of profit bubbles.
Yeah, I've got 7 trades left, and I would still contemplate whether I'd do that myself. And I think 7 trades left is a pretty good spot right now. But I still contemplate whether I did those, and I have contemplated going like the Gutho to Latrell. And if you don't think about these kind of trades, you don't really give yourself any options. So, but save it, brother, save the trade. All right, I think that wraps everything up nice and neatly, guys. Anything else you want to say before we finish up?
Okay.
Oh no, that pretty much covers. I think everything for the week covered up. And just good luck for your trades. If you're skinny on trades, myself included, hold where you can unless it is a pure upgrade.
Absolutely.
Definitely. And one thing I will say is that when I've got a few nuffs in my team, and I will say that my team is full of players that most of them haven't got many buys left. So I'm actually happy to have. I've got 3 nuffs at the moment, and I'm even thinking about a 4th just to build some cash up. But most of my team have no buys left, so I've made that safety there. So yeah, awesome. Thanks again, Jay, for jumping on, mate. It's been great having you on. You're welcome back anytime. Those stats are always good to have. Don't forget to check him out on Twitter, guys. Read up those stats. I will be logging on to Twitter after this and getting some info myself. So thanks, guys, and also, as always, thanks, Glenn, for your input, mate. So he's been always useful and handy to have. Awesome.
Jay,
thank you very much for having me on the Tragics, guys.
Anytime, mate.
Just before we go, at the end of the post, I always post this on our Facebook page and on Spotify and YouTube. But I will add Jay's handle up there, and I will also put on the page his stats he's put out for this week. Is that all right with you, Jay? I put them out.
Yeah, that's completely fine, mate.
Yeah, so I'll put all them up on the page to show you exactly what Jay does, so that you can follow him and know what Jay's doing. And I'll put the link up there so you can follow him on Twitter as well.
That's it. All right, guys. Thanks for listening, and we'll peace out. And I hope you see some green arrows this week.
So you want to be a champion?
Oh no! Now the knee. Well, that was it. Manu, what's he done there? He sold the dummy with a knee injury. It's a fake knee injury. That is set up and try for Boborovsky.
It's the next tackle. He gets an offload. He goes back and gets the football. Probably feels a cramp coming on in the back of his calf, and then just takes off.
Oh, what a beauty. So, you pick which has been the better moment. The bloke kicking the ball back from the traffic at the southern end, or Manu, the cramp, the fibber, and takes off to set up a try.